The ship came out of faster-than-light travel with a soft hum. Through the viewport, John Morrison saw it for the first time. Axis Prime, the great orbital station where 47 alien species gathered to rule the galaxy. It was beautiful and terrifying. Metal rings the size of small moons, spinning slowly around a glowing central core. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects near a hive. "We made it," said Ambassador Park Yuna. She stood at the front of the observation deck, her hands folded behind her back. She was a small woman, with sharp eyes and a calm voice. Earth had chosen her to speak for all of humanity. "Remember, everyone, we are guests here. We watch. We listen. We learn." Captain Kim Tae-ho nodded. He was tall and proud, wearing his military uniform with all its medals shining. "And if they threaten us, they won't," Park Yuna said. "They're too curious about us. We're the new species, the unknown." Dr. Lee Somi was already pressing her face against the viewport, like a child seeing snow for the first time. She was a xenobiologist. Alien life was her dream and her obsession. "I can see a Valan ship. Look at those wings. And there. That's definitely Korath design." "Oh, this is incredible." John Morrison said nothing. He stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, watching everything. He was the security officer for this delegation. A simple job. Protect the diplomats. Watch for danger. He was good at staying quiet. The shuttle docked, and they walked into Axis Prime. The air smelled strange, sweet and metallic at the same time. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on two legs, some floated, some crawled along the walls. Morrison kept his eyes moving, noting exits, counting guards, measuring distances. Nobody paid attention to him. Good. They were brought to the grand chamber. It was enormous. A circular room with seats rising up in rings, filled with hundreds of alien delegates. At the center stood a raised platform where a single figure waited for them. Vaughn, the arbiter of the Galactic Council. Morrison had studied the files. Vaughn's species was called the crystalline. They were beings of living mineral, their bodies sharp and angular, light refracting through their translucent forms. They were ancient, proud. They believed they could see the truth of any living thing. "Humans," Vaughn said. His voice echoed through the chamber like stones falling into deep water. "You have traveled far. You have built ships that bend space. You have earned the right to stand before us. But before we accept you, we must know what you are." Park Yuna stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "We are honored by this opportunity. We come in peace and silence." Vaughn raised one crystalline hand. "Words are easy. We do not judge by words. We judge by truth." Light burst from Vaughn's body. It swept over the human delegation like a wave. Morrison felt it pass through him. Cold, searching. It touched something deep inside him and then moved on. The assessment. Morrison had heard about this. The crystalline could read biological potential, intelligence, threat level. They used this power to rank every species, every individual. To them, the universe was a list, and everything had its place. Holographic displays flickered to life above each human's head. Park Yuna. The words glowed blue. Moderate diplomatic utility. Potential ally. Minor importance. Kim Tae-ho. Minor tactical relevance. Limited strategic value. Lee Somi. Scientific curiosity. Non-threatening. Negligible. And then Morrison. The display above his head flickered. Then, the words appeared. Inconsequential. No strategic value detected. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Dozens of alien voices making sounds Morrison didn't recognize, but understood perfectly. Mockery. Dismissal. One Korath delegate, A massive reptilian creature with scales like black iron pointed at Morrison and spoke to his companions. Morrison didn't need a translator. The gesture was universal. Look at this nothing. Look at this insect. Vaughn turned his crystalline gaze toward Morrison. This one. He carries no weight, no power, no purpose. He is beneath the council's notice. Morrison met Vaughn's eyes. He said nothing. His face showed nothing. But deep inside, in a place no alien scanner could reach, something cold and patient began to wake. The delegation was dismissed. They were assigned quarters in the lowest tier of the station. The worst rooms. The smallest viewports. Another insult. Another reminder of their place. That night, the others argued. This is unacceptable, Kim Tae-ho said, pacing the small common room. They treated us like animals, like things to be graded and sorted. We expected resistance, Park Yuna said calmly. This is not a defeat. It's a beginning. Lee Somi was reading through alien databases on her tablet, too excited to care about politics. Did you see the Velan? Their biology is based on collective consciousness. I have so many questions. Morrison sat by the viewport, alone. He stared at the stars. He remembered Mars. The red dust. The screaming. The moment the explosion tore through the colony dome and he watched his entire squad die. 12 soldiers, friends, family, gone in seconds. And Morrison, the only survivor, crawling through the wreckage, wondering why he lived when better people did not. After Mars, there was nothing. No medals, no promotions. Just a quiet transfer to diplomatic security. A nobody job for a nobody man. Inconsequential. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was nothing, but nothing had certain advantages. Nothing was invisible. Nothing was underestimated. Nothing could move through the world without anyone watching. Morrison stood and walked to the door. Where are you going? Park Yuna asked. Walking, he said. Learning the station. She frowned. Be careful. He nodded and left. For the next 3 weeks, while the diplomats attended meetings and the politicians argued about humanity's status, John Morrison walked. He walked through every corridor he could access. He studied every schematic he could find. He memorized maintenance tunnels, emergency exits, power junctions, and security patterns. He talked to workers, cleaners, engineers, the invisible people that every society ignored. They told him things, secrets, weaknesses. Nobody stopped him. Nobody questioned him. After all, he was inconsequential. When the station fell, he would be ready, and the station would fall. Morrison could feel it. The tension between the Korath and the Velen was growing worse every day. War was coming, and when it came, all the assessments and rankings and careful classifications would mean nothing. In chaos, only one thing mattered: will, and John Morrison had enough will to burn the stars. The explosion came without warning. Morrison was in Sector 9, walking through a civilian market, when the first blast tore through the station. The floor shook. Lights flickered. Then the screaming started. He moved instantly. Years of training took over. His body knew what to do before his mind could catch up. He ran toward the human delegation's quarters, pushing through crowds of panicking aliens. The air was thick with smoke and the sharp smell of burning metal. Another explosion. Closer this time. The walls groaned, and Morrison felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. Hull, breach. The station was tearing itself apart. He found the delegation in their common room. Park Yuna was on the ground, blood running from a cut on her head. Kim Tae-ho was frozen, eyes wide, staring at the chaos through the viewport. Lee Somi was trying to help the ambassador stand, but her hands were shaking too badly to be useful. Report, Morrison said. His voice was calm, flat, like they were discussing weather instead of disaster. Kim Tae-ho blinked. I don't. The Korath. They said something about the Korath attacking the Velen delegation. An assassination. The High Mother is dead, Lee Somi whispered. The Velen High Mother. The Korath killed her during the council session. War. Morrison had known it was coming. He just hadn't expected it today. Can you walk? He asked Park Yuna. She nodded weakly. I think so. My head. You'll be fine. Choi Minho. A young man appeared from the back room. He was part of the support crew. An engineer. Scared, but functional. Sir, what's the status of our section? Bad. Life support is failing in sectors 7 through 12. Emergency bulkheads are sealing us off from the main station. We have maybe 2 hours before the air runs out. Morrison processed this information in seconds. 2 hours. Emergency bulkheads. Failing. Life support. Evacuation routes. All blocked, sir. The main corridors are sealed or destroyed. Kim Tae-ho finally spoke. Then we're trapped. We're going to die here. Morrison looked at the captain. The man was supposed to be a leader, a soldier, but his eyes were empty. The fear had eaten him hollow. No, Morrison said. We're not. He walked to the viewport and looked out. Sector 9 was a civilian area, residential blocks, markets, parks. Thousands of aliens lived here. Families, children. Choi Minho, the maintenance tunnels on Deck 4. They connect to the emergency life support junction for this entire sector. Am I correct? Minho stared at him. How do you know that? Am I correct? Yes, sir. But those tunnels are narrow. They weren't designed for evacuation. They weren't designed for anything. That's why they'll work. Morrison turned to face the group. We're not waiting for rescue. We're going to restore life support for this sector. And then we're going to lead the survivors to the central hub. That's insane, Kim Tae-ho said. We're diplomats. Security personnel. We're not. You're what I say you are. Morrison's voice cut through the captain's protest like a blade. Right now, you're soldiers. You're rescuers. You're whatever these people need you to be. Is that understood? Silence. Park Yuna spoke. Her voice was weak but steady. Do what he says. All of you. They moved. Morrison led them through the corridors of Sector 9, gathering survivors as they went. Aliens of every species. Velan refugees. Their insectoid bodies trembling with fear. Oran families. The small mammalian creatures clutching their children. Even a few Korath civilians, confused and afraid, rejected by their own people for not supporting the war. He organized them, gave them tasks. A young Velan engineer named Tick became his shadow. The creature was terrified at first. Its species had just been attacked by another, and now a human was giving orders. But Morrison was calm, efficient. He treated Tick like an equal, asking about Velan engineering, listening to answers. Trust was built in actions, not words. They reached the maintenance junction. The life support systems were damaged, but not destroyed. Morrison studied the machines, while Minho explained the controls. This valve here controls oxygen flow to the entire sector. If we can reroute power from the auxiliary generators, do it, Morrison said. Minho worked. Morrison watched the corridors. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear weapons fire. The Korath soldiers were hunting Velan survivors. 20 minutes later, the air recyclers hummed back to life. Fresh oxygen flowed through the vents. The survivors cheered, but the danger wasn't over. Korath patrol, someone shouted. Coming this way. Morrison grabbed a length of metal pipe from a broken wall panel. It was heavy, cold, familiar. Everyone stay behind me, he said. Minho, get them moving toward the central hub. Use the route I showed you. What about you? I'll catch up. The Korath soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor. 4 of them. Massive. Armed with plasma weapons. Their scales were painted with war markings. They saw Morrison, one human, standing alone with a metal pipe. They laughed. The leader stepped forward. "Little human, move aside. We want the Velen insects." "Not you." Morrison didn't move. "You are inconsequential," the Korath said, clearly amused. "Our systems assessed you. You are nothing. Your systems were wrong." The Korath raised his weapon. Morrison moved. In zero-gravity combat training, the instructors always said the same thing. Forget strength, forget size, use the environment, use momentum, use the enemy's expectations against them. The Korath expected Morrison to run. Instead, he ran toward them. The leader fired. Morrison was already diving, using the wall to push himself at an angle the shot couldn't follow. The pipe connected with the Korath's knee joint. The alien screamed. "Second soldier." Morrison grabbed his weapon arm. Twisted. Used the alien's own mass to throw him into the third. They crashed together in a tangle of scales and claws. Fourth soldier. This one was smarter. Faster. His blade came down and Morrison felt it cut across his shoulder. Pain. Hot and bright. But pain was just information. Pain meant you were still alive. Morrison drove the pipe through the gap between the soldiers' neck plates. The Korath fell. The survivors were gone, safe, moving toward the central hub. Morrison stood alone in the corridor, surrounded by dead and dying enemies. Blood dripped from his shoulder. His hands were steady. The last Korath, the leader, was still alive, crawling, reaching for his weapon. Morrison stepped on his hand. "What are you?" the Korath gasped. Morrison looked down at the creature that had called him nothing. The creature whose species had laughed when his assessment appeared. The creature who had never once considered that a human might be dangerous. "I'm the one you didn't bother to assess," he said. Then, he walked away. Behind him, the Korath soldier died alone in the dark. Ahead, 1,000 survivors waited for a leader, and John Morrison, the inconsequential one, went to save them all. 3 days passed. The station was broken into pieces. Sectors cut off from each other. Communication systems destroyed. Thousands dead. Thousands more trapped and waiting for rescue that might never come. But in Sector 9, something unexpected was happening. John Morrison had built an army. Not soldiers, not warriors, just people. Refugees from a dozen different species, working together because one human had taught them how. Their base was an old storage facility near the sector's edge. Morrison had chosen it carefully. 2 exits, thick walls, close to water recycling and food storage. Every decision was calculated. Every move was planned. Choi Minho stood at a table covered with station schematics. He was pointing at a highlighted section. Sector 12, the communication hub. If we can reach it and get it working, we can send a signal to Earth, to anyone. Morrison nodded. What's between us and Sector 12? 3 sealed bulkheads, a collapsed corridor, and at least 2 Korath patrol zones. Weapons? We have 9 plasma pistols taken from dead soldiers. Maybe 30 shots total. A few blades. And... Minho hesitated. And you, sir. Morrison almost smiled. Almost. The survivors watched him with strange eyes now. Respect. Fear. Wonder. Word had spread about the corridor fight. About the human who killed 4 Korath soldiers with a metal pipe. The Velen whispered a name for him. Tharak-Un. The unseen storm. Captain Kim Tae-ho approached. The man had changed in 3 days. The fear was still there, but it was controlled now. Useful. Morrison had given him purpose. The Oren families are asking about food rationing, Tae-ho said. They're worried we'll run out before rescue comes. We won't run out. I did the calculations. 15 days of food if we're careful. Rescue will come before then. How do you know? Because Earth won't abandon us. And because I sent Tick through the maintenance shafts 2 days ago with a message, it reached a functioning Valan scout ship on the station's edge. They transmitted before the Korath shot them down. Teho stared. You never told anyone. Didn't need to. People work better when they have hope. Now they have real hope. In the Grand Chamber, far across the broken station, Arbiter Vaughn watched the security feeds. The crystalline being had survived the initial attack by pure luck. A falling beam had shielded him from the explosion that killed most of the council delegates. Now he hid in the sealed chamber with a handful of survivors, including Massa, a small fungal diplomat who had served as his aide for centuries. Show me Sector 9 again, Vaughn said. The holographic display flickered. Images appeared. Morrison, organizing work crews. Morrison, directing food distribution. Morrison standing before a crowd of alien refugees, speaking calmly, giving orders that were obeyed without question. This is impossible, Vaughn whispered. And yet it happens, Massa said softly. He was assessed. Inconsequential. No value. Our methods are perfect. They have been perfect for 10,000 years. Perhaps they measure the wrong things. Vaughn turned sharply. What did you say? Massa looked at the screen. At the small human, who had united 1,000 refugees from species that had hated each other for centuries. We measure potential, Massa said. Biological capacity, neural complexity, physical threat. But the human does not succeed because of his body or his brain. He succeeds because of something else. Something we have no word for. What something? I do not know. But I think we should learn. Morrison led the assault on Sector 12 personally. 20 volunteers. Velen, Orin, Korath, human. They moved through maintenance shafts that Morrison had memorized 3 weeks ago, when everyone thought he was just a simple security officer taking pointless walks. Tick stayed close to Morrison. The young Valan had become his translator, his advisor, his friend. Strange. How war made brothers of strangers. The patrol ahead is changing shifts, Tick whispered. 3 minutes before the new guards arrive. Then we have 3 minutes. They moved fast. Morrison went first. His shoulder still ached from the knife wound, but pain was a luxury he couldn't afford. The communication hub was guarded by 8 Korath soldiers. Morrison had expected 12. Someone was getting careless. Minho. The power junction on the left. Can you disable it? Give me 60 seconds. You have 30. The lights went out. Morrison attacked. It wasn't a fight. It was a storm. Morrison moved through the darkness like he belonged there, striking from angles the Korath couldn't predict, using their own confusion against them. Tick fought beside him. Kim Teho covered the rear. Minho worked frantically at the communication systems. 8 Korath soldiers fell. 3 refugees were wounded. None died. Victory. Minho's hands flew over the controls. I've got a signal. Broadcasting now. Open channel to all frequencies. Morrison took the communicator. His voice was calm, steady. This is John Morrison of the Earth delegation. Axis Prime has fallen. The Korath Dominion has attacked the Galactic Council. Thousands are dead. Thousands more are trapped and fighting for survival. We are in Sector 12. We control the communication hub. To the forces of Earth, to the Velan swarm, to all species who believe in peace, we ask for immediate assistance. He paused. To the Korath forces still hunting survivors, I am coming for you. Every atrocity you commit, I will remember. Every innocent you kill, I will avenge. You called me inconsequential. You will learn what that word truly means. The transmission ended. Minho looked at Morrison with wide eyes. Sir, you just threatened the entire Korath military. Ah, I know. There are thousands of them. We have 20 fighters, and the truth. Morrison looked at the survivors around him. Alien and human. Predator and prey. all of them standing together because he had shown them they could. The response came within hours. Ships from Earth, ships from the Velen Swarm, ships from a dozen species who had heard Morrison's broadcast and decided that maybe, just maybe, the little human was worth listening to. But before rescue could arrive, there was one more battle to fight. Dreth, the Korath warlord who had started the war. He was still alive, still holding hostages in the station's central core, still planning something terrible. Morrison looked at the schematics of the central core. The most defended location on Axis Prime. A fortress within a fortress. That's impossible to breach, Tejo said. Morrison studied the map. He saw pathways that others didn't. Weaknesses that hadn't been designed. Only grown through years of neglect and overconfidence. Nothing is impossible, he said. Only difficult. He began to plan. The unseen storm was just beginning. The central core of Axis Prime rose like a metal mountain at the heart of the station. Inside, Dreth waited with his army. Outside, John Morrison prepared to tear it down. Intelligence had come from unexpected sources. Korath civilians, who had fled Dreth's violence. Velen spies, who had escaped the initial massacre. Even a few council guards, who had survived and wanted revenge. The picture they painted was terrifying. Dreth had taken hostages, 300 beings from 12 different species, including Ambassador Park Yuna. He had wired the station's main reactor to explode. If his demands were not met, if his victory was not acknowledged, he would destroy everything and everyone. Morrison sat in the communication hub, studying the core's blueprints for the 100th time. The others watched him nervously. The rescue fleet will be here in 6 hours, Kim Tejo said. Maybe we should wait. In 6 hours, Dreth will realize he's lost. When he does, he'll trigger the reactor. No rescue, no survivors, just ash. Then what do we do? Morrison traced a line on the map. A maintenance shaft that ran beneath the core. Old, forgotten, too small for Korath soldiers. We go in, he said. We stop him. That's suicide. Morrison looked up. His eyes were empty of fear, empty of doubt, just cold, clear purpose. Maybe. But it's the only chance those hostages have. The only chance any of us have. The strike team assembled within the hour. Choi Minho, the engineer who had kept them alive. He would handle the reactor. Tick. The young Valan, who had grown from frightened refugee to trusted fighter. He knew the station's hidden paths better than anyone. Benna. An Orin healer, with steady hands and a gentle soul. Someone had to keep them alive if they got hurt. Kim Tejo, the captain who had found his courage again. He wanted redemption for his earlier failures. And Morrison, the inconsequential one. The unseen storm. 5 against an army. They entered the maintenance shaft at midnight, when the station's damaged lighting systems reached their lowest point. Darkness was their friend. Darkness hid the small from the large. Tick led them through tunnels that twisted and turned like the veins of some great metal beast. The air was hot, stale. Every sound echoed. Patrol above us. Tick whispered. 4 soldiers. Morrison listened. Heavy footsteps. Confident. Careless. Keep moving. They won't find us. They climbed. For 2 hours, they climbed through spaces never designed for living beings. Minho cut through sealed panels. Tick navigated by memory. Morrison pushed them forward. Always forward. Finally, they reached the core's lower levels. Dreth's soldiers were everywhere. Massive Korath warriors patrolling every corridor. Weapons at every junction. The hostages were held in the central chamber, directly below the reactor control room. I count 40 soldiers between us and the reactor, Tejo said quietly. 37, Morrison corrected. 3 are sleeping in the side room. Shift change in 20 minutes. How do you know that? I've been counting their patrol patterns through the ventilation grates for the last hour. They moved. The first group of soldiers died without seeing their killers. Morrison came from above, dropping through a ceiling panel with a blade in each hand. Tick followed, his Valan claws slicing through armor gaps. Teho covered their backs. Silent, efficient, deadly. They reached the reactor control room. Minho studied the systems while the others guarded the door. "This is bad," Minho said. "Very bad. Dreth has created a cascade loop. If anyone tries to shut down the reactor remotely, it triggers the explosion automatically. Can you stop it?" "Maybe. I need 20 minutes. You have 10. Morrison turned to the others. "Protect him. I'm going for the hostages." "Alone?" Benna asked. Her soft Orin eyes were wide with concern. "Dreth wants a confrontation. He wants a final battle. I'll give him one. While he's focused on me, Minho stops the reactor, and Teho gets the hostages out." "This is not a good plan," Tick said. "It's the only plan." Morrison walked toward the central chamber. The doors opened before him. Dreth was waiting. The Korath warlord was enormous. 3 meters tall, scales like black iron, eyes burning with hatred and madness. He stood on a raised platform, Ambassador Park Yuna chained at his feet. "The little human," Dreth said. "I have heard stories. They say you killed my soldiers with a pipe. They say you united enemies against us. They call you the Unseen Storm." Morrison stopped 20 meters away. He had no weapons, just his hands and his will. "They say many things. I say you are nothing. I say your species is nothing. Weak, small, insignificant. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no strength. Yet, you dare to challenge me?" "I dare." Dreth drew his plasma blades. Twin weapons that glowed with deadly heat. "Then come, little human. Show me what nothing can do." Morrison ran. Dreth was faster than he expected. The first blade came down, and Morrison barely twisted away. The second caught his side, burning through cloth and skin. Pain exploded through his body, but pain was just information. Morrison rolled, came up under Dreth's guard, and drove his fist into the gap between the warlord's neck plates. It was like punching stone. His knuckles cracked, but Dreth grunted and stepped back. The fight became a blur. Morrison was cut again. And again. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, but he kept moving, kept striking, kept finding the weak points that Dreth didn't know he had, because Morrison had watched. 3 weeks ago, in the Grand Chamber, when everyone else was paying attention to politics and assessments, Morrison had studied every alien species, every body type, every weakness. Dreth's species had a nerve cluster behind the left knee. Pressure there caused temporary paralysis. Morrison dove low, avoiding a killing blow, and struck the cluster with everything he had. Dreth's leg buckled. The warlord fell to one knee, roaring in surprise and fury. Morrison grabbed one of the fallen blades and drove it through the gap in Dreth's chest armor. The same gap he had noticed during their first meeting. The same weakness that no one else had seen. Dreth's eyes went wide. "You were nothing," he gasped. Morrison leaned close. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "That's what made me dangerous." Dreth fell. The remaining soldiers froze. Their leader was dead. Their god had fallen to a creature they had been told was worthless. Morrison picked up the second blade and faced them. "Leave," he said. "Take your wounded. Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that humans are not inconsequential. Tell them that if they ever threaten us again, I will return." The soldiers ran. Behind Morrison, the reactor hummed once and went silent. Minho had done it. The hostages were freed. Park, Yuna, barely conscious, looked up at Morrison, with tears in her eyes. "They were so wrong about you," she whispered. Morrison said nothing. He was too tired for words. But for the first time in years, since Mars, since the explosion, since the guilt, and the grief, and the emptiness, John Morrison felt something other than pain. He felt purpose, and he knew his work was not yet done. 6 months passed. Axis Prime was rebuilt. The station that had nearly been destroyed was now stronger than ever. New sections rose from the wreckage. New shields protected its people, and a new understanding spread through the galaxy. Humanity was not inconsequential. The Korath Dominion had shattered after Dreth's death. The warlord's followers scattered. The honorable Korath, those who had rejected the violence, came forward to rebuild their reputation. They signed peace treaties. They paid reparations. They learned a lesson that their species would not forget for generations. The Velen swarm declared humanity a shield-friend species, their highest honor. The first time in their history that they had given such a title to beings outside their own kind. Young Velen children learned Morrison's name in their schools. The unseen storm. The one who saved their people when no one else would. Ambassador Park Yuna recovered from her injuries. She became Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council. Her first act was to request equal status for all human delegates. No assessments, no rankings, no judgments based on alien standards. The Council agreed. Captain Kim Taeho returned to Earth as a hero. He never forgot the lessons he had learned. He wrote a training manual for all future diplomats, based on Morrison's methods. It was called The Invisible Approach. It became required reading for every human who would travel to the stars. Choi Min-ho was promoted. He became the lead engineer for Earth's new interstellar fleet. He designed ships based on the weaknesses he had discovered in alien technology during the crisis. His work made humanity's vessels faster and stronger than anything the galaxy had seen. Tick, the young Velan engineer, became an ambassador of his own kind. He traveled to Earth, learned human languages, studied human history. He wanted to understand the species that had produced John Morrison. He never did understand completely, but he spent his life trying. And Morrison? Morrison was summoned to the Grand Chamber. He walked into the same room where he had been declared worthless. The same seats, the same delegates. But everything was different now. Arbiter Vaughn stood at the center, waiting. The crystalline being looked older somehow, worn by the events of the past months, humbled in ways that his species had never experienced. The chamber was silent as Morrison approached. "John Morrison," Vaughn said. "We asked you to come because we owe you a debt, not just for the lives you saved, but for the truth you showed us." Morrison waited. He had learned patience long ago. Vaughn raised his crystalline hand. Light poured forth. The same light that had scanned Morrison 6 months ago. The same assessment that had found him worthless. This time, the holographic display flickered for a long moment. Then, words appeared. John Morrison. Incalculable. A murmur ran through the chamber. Incalculable. The crystalline had no word for what Morrison was. Their perfect systems, their 10,000-year-old methods, could not measure him. "Our assessment cannot define you," Vaughn admitted. "You do not fit our categories. You were broken, damaged, unremarkable by every standard we trusted, and yet you saved us all." "How did you do it?" Morrison looked at Vaughn. Then, at the hundreds of delegates who had once laughed at him. Then, at his own people, standing proud near the chamber's entrance. "Your species measures potential," he said. "You look at bodies, brains, biological capacity. You calculate what a being might do based on what they are. But you forgot something. What did we forget? You forgot that potential means nothing without will. A creature can have all the strength in the universe and still be weak. A creature can have nothing and still be unstoppable. Because strength is not in the body, it's in the choice." Vaughn was silent for a long moment. "And your choice?" Morrison thought about Mars, about the soldiers he had lost, about the years of emptiness that followed. about the moment in the burning corridors of Axis Prime when he had decided that he would not let more people die. "I chose to matter," he said. "I chose to be more than what your assessment said I was. We refuse to accept limits. We refuse to believe that we are nothing." The chamber was completely silent. Ambassador Park Yuna stepped forward. She walked with confidence now, with strength that had grown during the crisis. She stood beside Morrison and faced the council. "Earth has terms for our alliance," she said. "Simple terms. We will not be assessed. We will not be ranked. We will not be measured by standards we did not create. You will treat us as equals, or you will not treat with us at all." Vaughn looked at the other delegates. Ancient beings, powerful species, rulers of empires that had existed since before humanity discovered fire. One by one, they nodded. "The council votes in favor," Vaughn announced. "Humanity is recognized as equal partners in the galactic community. No assessments. No conditions." Morrison turned to leave. His work was done. But before he could reach the door, a small figure rushed toward him. Tick. The young Valan pressed something into Morrison's palm. A small crystal, glowing with inner light. Morrison recognized it. Sacred resin from the Velan hive. An honor given only to the greatest heroes of their species. "For my people," Tick said. "For the unseen storm. For the human who proved that nothing is ever, truly, nothing." Morrison looked at the crystal. Then at Tick. Then at the chamber full of beings who had once thought him worthless. He nodded once and walked out into the stars. Earth's first interstellar embassy ship waited in the docking bay. Morrison stood at its forward viewport, watching the galaxy spin slowly beyond the glass. Kim Taeho found him there. The captain stood beside him in comfortable silence for a moment. "You could be an admiral now," Taeho said. "A senator. A hero. Anything you want." Morrison shook his head. "I'm not here for that." "Then what are you here for?" Morrison thought about the question. About everything that had happened. About everything that still needed to happen. Humanity was part of the galaxy now. But there were other species out there. Other threats. Other beings who might look at humans and see something weak. Something conquerable. Someone needed to prove them wrong. Again and again. Until the lesson stuck. "To prove that nothing is ever inconsequential," Morrison said. Taeho nodded slowly. "And if another war comes? If another Dreth rises?" Morrison looked at his reflection in the viewport. He saw the scars on his face, the gray in his hair, the weight of years and battles in his eyes. But he also saw something else. Purpose. "Then I'll be there," he said. "And I'll remind them what humans are capable of." The ship's engines hummed to life. Stars streaked past as they jumped into faster-than-light travel. Toward Earth, toward home. But home was not the end. Home was just the beginning. John Morrison, the man who was declared inconsequential, looked at the universe and smiled. He had proven them wrong once. He would prove them wrong again. Because that was what humans did. They never stopped fighting. Never stopped believing. Never accepted the limits that others tried to impose. The Galactic Council had measured potential, but they had failed to measure will. And will, Morrison knew, could move the stars themselves.